Welcome. Today we're going to discuss surface preparation for fine finishes in the context of cabinet making. Okay, fine cabinet making. And this is a very interesting subject. I've been meaning to make a small series of different finishes. We'll begin with shellac after this video, and I want to discuss with you other finishes like oils and many other things, because this is a subject that it's so very often overlooked. um, it might not seem very important in YouTube videos or in magazines, but in real life experience of fine furniture, a finish is a very, very important part. And even the most ignorant user will actually realize and notice very well and appreciate a fine finish, which is not only a fine, even sheen, but also, and perhaps most importantly, a very nice tactile experience. And the tactile experience is super important. Alan Peters wrote in his book that he appealed to his users through all of their senses, including what they hear, what they touch, what they even smell. And that's why we choose certain woods, not only for their look, but also for their smell. And we'll discuss all of those things. I think those are fascinating subjects, and we'll discuss a lot about that in the future. But touch, it's a very important part. And I bet you all have had this experience of meeting a piece of furniture, a fine furniture, and the first thing you want to do is just to stroke it. You want to feel it with your hands. And whenever a student comes to my house, usually in the level 2 intensive courses, we go to my house and we discuss many different types of furniture, constructions, and so on. They touch the surfaces, and the first thing they ask me is, what is this finish that feels so amazing? And what they actually mean is, how did you make the surface preparation to make this feel this way? It is not so much about the product itself, it is about the surface prep, because surface prep is like 3/4 of a fine finish. I myself, I don't subscribe much to this idea of using spray guns for finishing, which is very convenient, particularly if you're in a production situation. But this involves lots of very specific gear, a place to do it, and air ventilation, and many other things that for most of us are very difficult to acquire. And it would take lots of room in the workshop as well. And at the end of the day, it doesn't feel nice to me. Spray finishes, they don't have the tactile qualities of hand-applied finishes, in my experience. Maybe my experience is just too short for that. But also I have this feeling that you've been spending maybe 400, 500 hours of time making a fine piece of furniture, and then you will just encapsulate it in plastic, and it will feel like it's encapsulated wood. So yeah, if anytime you have the experience of touching a fine finished hand applied, you will see that is really a very big part of real life experience of furniture. And yeah, so that's what we're going to discuss in these videos. Okay, so this first one is surface prep, then we'll discuss shellac, which is one of my favorite finishes. All right, so you will find that in the next video. This is a demonstration piece that I've been showing you in the last few videos. It's nearly completed now. We're very soon doing the level 3 course, which is all about frame and panel structures. And this needs to be taken apart, as you can see. So I'm gonna just remove this. And I have this top here already finished. This is a 150-year-old Cuban mahogany, believe it or not. And I'm still missing the finish on the inside surface. And usually you wouldn't apply finish on an inside surface unless you want to have a more balanced moisture exchanged. Okay. But in reality, all vintage furniture I've ever experienced, it was never finished on the inside. Okay, I think we've become a little bit precious about some things in the past, and yeah. Anyway, uh, not so much rambling. I'm gonna try and remove this back panel here. And so usually the top of this kind of carcass, it would be glued on or screwed on. In this case, I've installed it with bolts, and that's also because I need to remove it to explain things about the anatomy, the inside anatomy of this piece. So give me just a few minutes, and I'll remove it. Okay, so that's the last one of the brass screws, and here we have the top. We're just going to finish these inside part. I personally I'm quite keen on finishing inside surfaces, but don't think you have to, or that it's something that most people do, because that's just not the case. Okay, and you can see here the threaded inserts for the screws, and also the holes for these locating dowels. Quite an unusual arrangement, but I felt this was a very good situation in which to discuss surface preparation, and then how we apply shellac here, because it's a rather wide surface, and I think you're gonna see very clearly what I try to explain to you. Okay, let me protect the bench a little bit, and also this surface, which is already finished, and we'll begin with surface prep. Yeah, so first of all, I'm gonna get a sacrificial board to protect the bench, and then I'm going to put a piece of cloth to protect the finished surface. And here we go. So you might be wondering, if I have applied oil here on the outside, why am I not applying oil on the inside? And here's the answer. All oils smell rancid. Even if the manufacturer tells you that they've been adding some very beautiful flavors to it, it always smells too strong. And so every time you open a drawer, you get this kind of stale smell out of it. So I think shellac, it's a much better option for inside surfaces, or just nothing. Okay. Also, wax could be an idea. I'll tell you eventually how to make my beeswax and carnauba wax blend. So the way to start preparing a fine surface is hand planing, of course. And you know, our previous video, or one of our previous videos, was about preventing tear out, which is a very important part. You can do nearly every surface preparation just with hand plane, as much as it comes to tear out list. You can get perfect surfaces straight from a plane. But then many people think if you're a good professional or proficient woodworker, you should leave the surface just as it comes from the plane, and this should be a surface that it's not possible to improve. And that's actually a fallacy, and I'm gonna be telling you why, and I'm sure you will agree upon this. So in some traditions, for instance, the Japanese people, in their tradition, they are very well known for leaving beautiful, silky, smooth surfaces out of a hand plate, their kano, as they call them. But that's a very reduced context. Okay, the Japanese, for the most part, historically, they've been using very soft woods, which are very fine grained, and so it's very easy to just leave the surfaces as silky as they could possibly be. All right, but in other places of the world, in other traditions, this might not apply. And let me show you why. Here I have two pieces of wood, and I cannot get you to feel what I'm touching, but I can convey you a very clear idea of texture. Okay, if I scrape here, okay, I think you're hearing very clearly that this is a very coarse wood. This is European ash. It's beautiful. It's very nice, but it has a very strong texture. Okay, so if I compare it to this, which is a hard maple from the USA, it could be a sycamore here in Europe. This is a very fine, soft, silky kind of wood. Okay, and so there is a great difference. And now a hand plane is not really, or a smoothing plane is not really smoothing the wood in the sense of it removing its texture. Okay, it will be removing any unevenness, for instance, or any steps that you left, or splinters, this kind of thing. So you need to imagine the wood as being an array of tubes, okay, that they're going, as they arise to the surface, they're going to be severed by a very sharp plane blade, okay, and this meeting point of the sharp blade, the surface will appear just like a bunch of holes, which are actually the rims, very sharp rims of those tubes. Okay, so in open grain woods, these tubes are very coarse, very big. Okay, and this is what you're listening here. Just a bunch of tubes being severed in a very slanted way. And so we come to the conclusion that a hand plane, a very sharp hand plane, is going to reveal whatever nature of the wood you're working with. Okay, so if it's a coarse wood, it will feel always coarse. And I have some students that expect a hand plane surface to feel always silky or even as glass, and this is not going to be the case. That's the case with many fine grained woods like hard maple here, which feels super silky smooth. All right, and so how do we make this surface, which is a naturally coarse surface, to feel and appear softer to the touch and more pleasing to the touch? Like, here's how we do that. This wood is, I wouldn't say it a coarse wood or a fine wood. It's sort of an in-between, okay? And I've been already planing it smooth, so there is no tear out. And yet there is some texture, the natural texture of the wood we were discussing. And we're going to improve that one. And one of the very interesting ways to do that is, first of all, raise the grain slightly with hot water. And then all those fibers are just going to sort of spring up, and we'll be able to sand them with very fine sandpaper. And this will make up a much silkier surface. So I'm going to get the hot water, which I have here. It's some cloth, nothing special about that. And you'll eat a very small amount. Okay, very small amount of water. It's just dampening the surface ever so slightly. And since the water is very hot now, it's going to evaporate very quickly. If I am a little bit excessive, I can always just dry it to the dry part of the cloth. And so we're nearly not introducing nearly any moisture into the timber, okay, only on the surface, and I can see it already drying, so it's not very much. And so almost immediately, as you can see here, this is nearly getting dry. It's dry in some areas, and I can feel, you will have to believe that I'm feeling the wood being slightly, ever so slightly raised and more kind of textured. Okay, and now I'm going to knock this raised grains off with some sandpaper. Now I'm going to be using 400 grit silicon carbide paper. That's a good one, but I like to tell you about this. I discovered this abrasive mesh about 10 years ago already. It's called ABRANET from MIRKA, and it's a great abrasive Very interesting. It lasts a very long time, so I thought it could be a very interesting idea. If you want more information, I'll leave you the links down below to some of those abrasives that I like using. One of them is going to be ABRANET. Today I'm using this one, and just with a block of wood with some cork, and this is going to be very fun. Okay, some of you might be thinking now, well, this guy is standing here and there are some threaded inserts and stuff. Yes, we shouldn't have the threaded inserts here. That should be the latest part of the process, installing the hardware. Not today, sorry, but we can come and begin sanding. And as I start, I can see in some places that I have some plane tracks that I perhaps forgot to remove. And so I say plane tracks, I really don't mean these ghastly steps that result when you dig in with the corner of a blade, okay? I mean these gentle scallops, ever so slightly, almost imperceptible scallops that come with a slightly cambered blade, okay? And you can see here there are some areas that are being sanded a little bit before that the other ones, and so I will need to insist a little bit just to get everything even, but it's not much work. I'm not making a lot of fresh, okay? Yeah. So that's about that. It's about 30 seconds of sanding at the most. And now I can remove the dust here. And the surface now feels very, very smooth. And now it's actually becoming so smooth that I can actually feel every individual little bit of dust or loose grit that I could find here. Because indeed, your touch, it's extremely sensitive. You can feel really minute stuff from it. So yeah, now we're ready to apply our finish, and the surface preparation is done. Okay, a few things to say still, but I wanted to let you know I'm hoping that you will pick up some good advice here and that you can improve your surfaces with this knowledge that I'm sharing with you. And hopefully you will give us a like and subscribe to our channel if you're learning things so that we can keep up. And my commitment to you is that we're going to try and deliver our best every time. All right. So one of the things I really want to emphasize is that you don't need to do this to every piece of timber that you're working with. And certainly on the inside surface of a cabinet, I wouldn't bother that much, really. It's just a good moment for me and a good surface to explain all of those things to you. All right. But you will find there is a clear difference if you do this or you don't do it, particularly on end-grained surfaces. All right. Yeah. So the next thing we're gonna be doing is applying some beautiful shellac here, and I will tell you my method, which of course, as always, is not really my method. Is the method described by James Trenov in his second book, which I find just unbeatable. Okay. See you next video.